This is Listening with Franklin Livingston, and our guest is Margeaux Appleton.
How old was Moses when God called him at Mount Sinai?
Oh, I do not remember.
He was really old.
He was old.
So do you think he was
old.
ready? God said, okay, you're going to go to Pharaoh. You're going to say to him, release my people. Right. And what did he say? I don't know if I can speak that fluently. Right. I have speech problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't say like speech problem, like was it more like speech pathology related or speech impediment? But he wasn't confident. Again, going after the principle rather than the literal text. He said, I'm not ready to talk. I can't.
And if you put that boundary in place for yourself, that's going to limit you. You know, you
Right.
are ready for everything, even if you don't. I mean, like, everything seems scary. When you're in high school, you say you're not ready for college. You are. When you're out of college, you're like, oh, I'm not ready for a serious relationship. You are. It's just if you're willing to put that
Willing.
effort in.
That's the thing. So answering the call.
Yes.
God does not call perfect or ready people. He calls the one he has called to.
Yes.
Because then he provides. So he said, God said, I'm going to send Aaron with you. He said, okay, then go. Now, it wasn't that he was like, okay, then it wasn't a big deal. Why? Because here's another thing, historical, why history is important. Moses was raised in the palace.
Mm-hmm.
He knew everything about that. He left the palace when he was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
A kid who lived, it's like someone who was raised in, say, the United States and lived here until 40, goes to another country for 10 years. I met a guy in Vietnam. He has been in Vietnam and the Philippines for the past 40 years. I don't know how old he is. He might be 80, maybe 70 or 60 if you're watching. I don't know. So maybe he has an authentic American accent because his background is from Colorado. I think they live in Texas now. But if I don't know how many months he spends there, say he spends 1 month in Texas and 11 months abroad,
Mm-hmm.
his accent, his mannerism is pure American.
Yeah.
Right? And the same thing, if God asks him that go back and meet somebody at the Parliament, Congress, or the White House, I don't think he'll have a problem in communicating. So if he said, I don't think I can talk. Yeah, if he was to be sent to, say, an Arab country, Saudi Arabia, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah, and you're never ready for anything. You really aren't. You're never, there's so many factors that go into everything. It's being willing, and not only being willing, but kind of like thinking, like, if you want to let something pass you by because you're not ready, or seize the opportunity and accept the fact that you might not be perfect and you might fail, and that's okay, embracing the fact that you're a human and it doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to miss out on so much if you think you have to be ready for everything, because you're not going to be. Never, ever. And I think that's so
You must
important.
be willing to. You can't be ready to be spouse. You can never be ready to be a mom.
And that's a big thing. Like with relationships, I've heard so much like people around my age or a little bit older, like, oh, I'm not ready. You just don't want that. And that's okay. But like, I'm ready.
Or you have been told
you're not
because
ready.
That's another thing where the social pressure.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about that, about one of my closest collaborators, that if there's some sort of social pressure, you gotta have 6 packs in order to be accepted to be a boyfriend.
Yes.
You can try, but if that's not your call,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the thing, this call concept is also very ancient. A lot of people don't use that term.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a very religious circle.
Yes, but it's very like societal pressures onto like what you are and are not ready for at certain ages, but it really comes down to, do you want it? Mm-hmm. How bad do you want it? And are you willing to work for it? Mm-hmm. If you are like, if you meet someone and you don't feel ready for a relationship, if there's someone you're willing to work towards that for, you're more than ready. Mm-hmm. It's just about like the effort you put in and the willingness and activeness to work towards that thing. I'm in performing arts school. You know, did I think I was ready for that in high school to get into a performing arts college? No, of course I didn't. Because you never feel ready for anything important. But I auditioned, I tried my best, I worked hard, and I got it, you know, because I know that I'm never going to be perfect. And it's always worth doing something. I think one of my favorite things ever, a quote my dad told me was, it's better to regret doing something than regret not doing it. It's so much better to do something and learn from it than to not do it at all and live with knowing that you missed an opportunity. And that comes with anything, religious, ready or not. Like, are you willing to let the opportunity presented to you pass you by? That should be the only important question, you know?
And there's a verse actually very beautiful that used to be my favorite, one of the favorite passages in First Corinthians chapter 8. I'm not going to read it. They're all great things. All the passages really great. The chapter is really great. There's one verse where the Apostle Paul is saying to Corinthians, never hesitate in trying, right? And different versions of the language will use different phrases, but that's the essence. That keep on trying. Never be like some people just get like, and even some people, faith-based people would say, oh, I'm not gonna do it, I'll see if it's God's will, it's gonna happen. But a lot of things don't happen, because if it was supposed to happen, then God doesn't work, then it would have been recorded in the book. All these people, starting from the greatest, like who was God's friend, like Abraham. God says, hey, leave this town, leave this land and go to another land. That's it. Then he had to probably pack. Then in those days, they probably had carts and oxes or whatever, the mode of transportation. There's a lot of work in packing and moving. You're going to move soon.
Oh, yes.
And if you say, I received a divine order to go to Brooklyn, move to Brooklyn from Manhattan, but I'm not going to pack.
I'm already
not the way it takes work.
I'm not moving until
a lot of time.
Probably mid-March, and I'm already starting to pack and already like have travel plans for my partner and my parents to come help me move, just because I'm not moving out of a 5th-story walk-up all by myself. Moving into that place was one of the worst experiences of my life. I walked up the stairs maybe 70 or 80 times to move in.
Yeah.
5 stories, 70 or 80 times is a lot.
It's a lot. I'm trying to say, like, I don't think I could have done that.
It's getting home from classes. I stand at the bottom of the steps and I'm like.
And your new building is also without an elevator, correct?
My new building does have an elevator.
Oh, does
yes,
have,
that was a really important thing to look for my health. It has an elevator and a bunch of amenities that my apartment building right now does not have. It has like in-building laundry and like a doorman. So it's
gym also,
and a gym, yes, which is awesome. My building right now has my apartment.
Yeah, well, I'm familiar with those kind of buildings.
And a door.
Very old, ancient.
The door is like the main entrance door is like slightly slanted green and graffitied pretty bad. The window's a little scratched up, and the door doesn't really, to my apartment, you have to like jiggle it both ways to get the door to even open. It's not a great place, but it was a last minute affordable option as a student.
I understand.
So I'm very, very lucky that it's looking like I'm gonna have somewhere to live with my partner this upcoming year that is safe, comfortable, and healthy for me, which is really nice.
Very good. And that's where you're at. Let's talk. You talked about having kids. You talked about baptizing, getting your kids baptized. But I want to hear more. When does this desire or urge of being in relationship? I heard a little bit about childhood. What happened? How was your childhood? How was your inclination toward friends? And then when this relationship, because at the age of 16, you mentioned you had this talk, which did not go well with the lady at your church. So when was this urge you developed
For like
about having a
relationship.
romantic relationship? Was it influence? Was it internal?
I
What
think
happened?
one of my biggest dreams since, probably like 5 was to be a mother. I've always wanted to have a family. I love kids. I love working with kids. That's something I've um always been super proud of, and I love the thought of a family, and that's something I really want and something I've always really wanted, and I think more of that also comes with the way I was raised. I learned so much about myself, and I really want to be a good parent and bring children safely into this world in a environment that they can thrive in to the best of my abilities. But a big thing to me is I love alone time and I value that, but I've always been someone who loves the presence of another person. I've always wanted to settle down younger than most other people my age. I've always wanted to get married and settle down and start a family younger than people my age. My parents didn't get married until late 30s. Have me My mom I think had me late 30s, early 40s, and my parents are now um in their 60s, which is totally okay, and very happy for them that they made that choice for themselves. With my health and all of my health issues, it's important to me to be able to have kids at an age where my body is still functioning enough to be able to be the mother I want to be. And I think that's really important to me. And I've always wanted someone to lean on, not to like lean on in a put pressure on them way, but lean on them in a way of just being with another person. I think that's so comforting. And some people don't like that. Some people like being alone. I've had the conversation as well with like my family um being like, "Oh, like you don't need a partner." I'm like, I do not, but I would like one. That's something I've always liked. My cousin, um her and her husband very happy together, love each other very much, but they like don't she does not like sleeping in the same bed as him because she loves her space. She likes space. She does not want to be like, I'm the opposite. I love to be right next to someone. I'm very like personable and touchy, and I've always wanted that. And I've been through a handful of relationships, and they've all taught me different things. And I'm now with someone who wants the same things I do in a very similar timeline that I do. And, you know, what I think I learned from that, especially, is like if you want something, you can make that happen, but not everyone wants the same thing. I went through a relationship with someone who I knew what I wanted, and he tried to pretend like he wanted the same thing because we were fond of each other, and we got into a relationship, and it ended very poorly because at the end of the day, he did not want any of that. He does not even know if he wants to have a family at all. Um, which is okay, but I do, and that's important to me, and I pretended it wasn't because I think at the age I was in, I was like, "Oh, I don't wanna have to deal with the whole dating again. I'm just gonna." I hope I think, the relationship right before that person was very abusive, and I was very, not treated well in that, so being in a better relationship, which was not great, there were a lot of flaws in that one, but better, I was like, "Oh, I don't ever wanna lose this. This is it." When we were on very different pages. And I'm very lucky now because I'm in a relationship with someone who is very communicative and we are very on the same page. We both have incredible career goals, but we both also want to settle down and start a family at a younger age. And are working towards that. Like, where he's moving in with me this summer. And, someone who isn't like, oh, I could maybe see a future with you, possibly. It's someone who's like, oh, I want a future with you. Let's make it happen. Let's work for it. Relationships aren't easy. We've been in our fair share of fights and scares, and are we sure this is gonna work? Every couple has a time where they sit down and they're like, are we sure this is the right thing to do for both of us? And it's just learning how to work with another person, and not every day is perfect. Plenty of days are not perfect. There are gonna be months that are awful and you're screaming and crying, and that's life, but at least speaking for me personally, I'm more than willing to do that for this person. And I'm more than willing to do that because that's what I would like. And that's the kind of future I would want. And I think you know, anything that happened with my family growing up, I always looked up to my father as a father figure and as a partner to my mom, and just saw how amazing that was. And I've always wanted something like that. I've always wanted a family, and it's been not even something that was pushed in my head. Even some of my family's like, oh, like, we'll think about it, feel things out. I've just always wanted a family, and I think that's something that has always been super important to me.
So when you were 5, you had a desire to have a family.
Yeah, I was like,
But
I want to be a
when did
mother.
you get into your first relationship and how?
I was in my first relationship when I was late 15, early 16, with somebody I met online. Um, I don't think I feel comfortable saying much more about that, given that that was a very, very bad situation. There were threats involved and some mental and physical just things that are not great there. I'm very, very lucky I got out of that.
And you just had a desire, or you were more like someone who just wanted to explore and see what happens if I just go on this site or app?
I think at that point it was like, I know I had the desire to at some point. I didn't expect it to come at that point, but I was like, I'm gonna open the gates, and if something happens, something happens. Step towards my future, gotta start learning about that stuff. I met this boy, he seemed very nice, and he started to manipulate me a lot. And I got out of that relationship and was in a very, very bad spot. And then my second long-term relationship I got into shortly after. And it was not anywhere near the first one, but we weren't in the relationship for the right reasons. We never were. We had both just gotten out of relationships when we decided to start getting together. And I think it was something that we were really good friends. And
that was also online?
No, that was in not online, but we were good friends, and it happened, and I don't think it's something either of us think was the best idea in the long run. And it wasn't great, and there were a lot of negatives, and there were of course some positives, like there are in every relationship. But it's a learning experience, and I got out of that relationship and I really realized what I wanted. And I got out of that relationship and I was like, I tried to convince him to want a future with me so hard when I don't even think I really saw one with him. I tried to convince myself I did because I didn't want to wait any longer, and I'm very lucky that happened, because then I met the person who I really see a realistic future with, who we have talked about everything, and is someone who loves, supports me, and is on the same page as me, wants the same things as me, without me having to be like, oh, you should want this because I want it. He just does. And it's really special to be in something like that. And I be careful because I don't want to talk too badly about any past stuff in case anyone sees this or anything, but I also want to shed light on how positive my current relationship is, and how, as someone who's always wanted to find their person, and I've always kind of believed in connections to people and finding a person, and I've always kind of believed in soulmates, not in the general way of like everyone ends up with their soulmate, but in the way of you have a soulmate, but there are also a lot of worlds in which soulmates don't end up together because the world is unpredictable and not even love can withstand everything that happens in the world. But it's really like this man, I believe, is that for me, and whatever happens, even if in 5 years we decide, it's not working and we need to go separate ways, he has been so kind, so considerate through every argument, through every talk, and also just one of the most incredible people I've ever been around. And it just makes me realize, like, meeting him made me remember why I wanted what I did. I want a family because hopefully I get to raise a child with someone so amazing, with such views similar to mine, with someone who makes me feel so safe, so secure, so taken care of in ways that I could have never dreamed about. And it's always been something that I've looked towards, and I think in the past it was something I kind of rushed because I wanted it. And when I kind of decided, yep, nope, I'm not going to do that, I'm done looking for things, kind of something came, slam me in the head. And I remember when I met him, I was like, I don't want anything. Nope, not ever getting in a relationship again. I don't ever want to think about dating. Don't want to think about it. I'm going to be single and alone for the rest of my life. And we just became best friends.
Mhm.
Like, he knows my brain better than I know my brain. It's crazy. And we just became such good friends. And then when I realized I was like just lying to myself, being like, oh my gosh, this is a person I actually see something with, and not because it's convenient, not because, you know, we weren't on the same campus. We go to different schools. We met through one of his friends. Nothing was easy for us to be able to start something, and especially after something that was easy. The previous relationship that I was in was with someone from school, someone who I was friends with, was with 24/7, and it kind of just developed into like, oh, we're together all the time, and you're kind of attractive, like, might as well, we're going out, might as well, right? And it kind of escalated from that. I really realized that in this way I had friendship, and then I realized that I was just lying to myself that I like have feelings for him, and he was so patient with me, and I was like, I need time to figure out if this is really what I want, because I'm not getting into another relationship if I know it's going to end.
Right.
I would only get into another relationship if there was a possibility of it being the last one I'm in. And obviously the worlds and you can't predict anything, so I can't say that he is the last person I'm ever going to be with, but I hope he is, and I think he is, and you never know what happens, but whatever happens, he's been the most understanding partner, and no matter how many issues we've had, he's never intentionally put blame on me, and never made me feel like a bad person or a bad partner. And I don't know. It's really cool, especially after just how I grew up and the stigma of the guilt.
Right.
And how much guilt I felt. I feel guilt in this relationship with him all the time, and I'll call him and be like, I feel like a terrible person. He's like, why? I was like, because I dropped something and it broke and my mom's gonna be mad at me. And he's like, okay, let's talk about it.
Right.
Or with him, I know sometimes I say things to him. It happened last night. We were playing video games together, and I just got really overstimulated and just started crying. And he was like, whoa, what's going on? He was giggling. He was like, okay, what's going on? I was like, I feel like you're mad at me because I asked you a question about the game and you didn't answer me. And he was like, okay. So, like, he's so gentle with that guilt, I feel, and has never taken advantage of that. And I mean, we all make mistakes. He has made mistakes. I have made mistakes. But the most incredible thing about him as another person is that he has owned up to every mistake he has ever made with me. And there are times like we got in a little scuffle, just a little like argument. And then he would come back and be like, hey, I was out of line. Can we talk again? I need a different view on things and I want to apologize. That's the first thing he will say. He doesn't get defensive when I'm like, hey, that really hurt my feelings. When he realizes if he did, he's like, oh my God, that makes so much sense how that could have hurt you. Let me think of ways in the future I can be better about conveying my needs without ruining yours. A relationship is all about compromise, and you have to be willing to fight for that person and compromise for that person. And that doesn't mean you need to give anything up. It just means you have to work for it. And I think that's really important and something I learned a lot growing up. Like one of the biggest positives I took from my family, and it's something even with religion that's always been kind of scary to me is, like what happens when I find someone or get married, what religion doesn't have to be completely rooted in. And it's been so nice because we've had conversations about like keeping our faith very open and making sure our kids are raised in an environment with the word sin not being used.